Somewhere in the northern sky, a single point of light did something no star is supposed to do. It dimmed, not by the neat fraction a passing planet would carve, but in ragged, irregular drops. Nobody could say what stood between us and all that missing light. Imagine the answer was a structure, something built, a shell of panels wide enough to blot out a real slice of the star. This isn't a claim that it exists, it's a thought experiment. Take the strangest explanation and walk it through the evidence. Because if it were true, everything we assume about our place in the galaxy would need rewriting. The star sits 1,470 light-years away, in Cygnus. NASA's Kepler telescope watched it from 2009 to 2013. Volunteers on a project called Planet Hunters caught it first. A light curve down an estimated 22%, then a slow climb back. A Jupiter-sized planet would have dimmed it by barely 1. Welcome to the impossible archive, where history and the impossible meet. So pull the raw Kepler numbers and start counting what a dip that deep would actually take. Lay a ruler against that same curve and see what the numbers say. When a planet crosses the face of its star, it carves a clean, shallow notch out of the light. A dip you could set your watch by. For scale, a planet the size of Jupiter passing in front of its star dims that star by only around 1%. Whatever crossed this star's face blocked far more. 22% is not a notch. It is a bite. To swallow that much of a star's glare, an object would have to be enormous, and its edge was ragged where a planet's would be smooth. So the first honest thing to say is what this is not. Not a planet, and not the tidy signature Kepler was built to find. No known planet carves a dip this deep, and none tears its edges this ragged. The shape simply had no name in the catalog. That leaves a gap where a name should be. A dip this deep, this irregular, does not fit the catalog. That is not a failure of the data. That is a discovery nobody has taken seriously enough. Yet. So they gave the anomaly a name, and then they asked the harder question. If a planet can't do this, what can? So who first looked at that ragged light and gave it a name? For years, the anomaly sat in the raw Kepler data as a shape without a label, flagged by volunteers, but unclaimed by any formal study. Then, in 2015, astronomer Tabetha Boyajian led the paper that finally caught up with it. Her team cataloged years of dimming and gave it the nickname that stuck. Where's the flux? It was never a claim about the cause, only that the numbers didn't add up. And once a thing has a name, people start saying out loud what they were only thinking. Jason Wright, an astronomer at Penn State, went further than anyone had in print. Among the explanations worth testing, he suggested, was an artificial megastructure, something built. He did not say it was there. He put it on the list of things to rule out. Coming from a working astronomer, that alone moved it off a forum thread. So where does that idea come from? Not from him, and not from this century. The idea itself is older than space travel. Physicist Freeman Dyson proposed it in a 1960 paper in the journal Science. A civilization advanced enough would eventually enclose its star to capture the full output. He was not describing this star. He was working out what an outgrown civilization would build if it ran out of room to grow. And Dyson himself credited the concept to fiction first. He pointed back to a 1937 novel called Star Maker by the English writer Olaf Stapledon, which imagined whole civilizations wrapping structures around their own suns. The physics came later. He took the picture straight from a novelist's page. So keep the register clear. None of this is an explanation of the dimming light. It is a thought experiment, decades before anyone measured a single dip in this star's glow. What would a truly vast engineering project look like from a distance? So how large would such a shell have to be to matter at all? So start with the ruler someone drew for exactly this kind of question. In 1964, Nikolai Kardashev proposed grading civilizations by power alone, not weapons, not territory, just energy harnessed. A Type 2, on his scale, holds its whole star, on the order of 400,000 trillion watts, every drop caught before it escapes. Beside that, our whole species is a spark set next to a bonfire. The same fire on a scale we can barely picture. And that is why this belongs in a serious conversation about the Great Filter. If enclosing a star is what a civilization eventually does, the galaxy should be dotted with the heat of that work. The quiet is the puzzle, which brings it back to one flickering point of light in the Swan. That light left its star 1,470 years ago, reaching a telescope only now. So the real test isn't whether we can picture a shell around a star. It is whether that ancient light carries the marks such a thing would leave. So put the question to the sky and listen. Wrap a star to drink its output, and the machinery running it needs power, signal traffic, the ordinary chatter of a working world. Something built to that scale should leak. No structure that large stays quiet. Radio telescopes turned toward the star soon after the hypothesis went public, listening for any deliberate signal, a tone, a pattern, anything that could not be dust or gravity. What came back was nothing. No broadcast, no beacon, no narrow spike rising out of the noise. The silence itself became data. Here is what that silence is worth. It does not close the case, and honesty means saying so plainly. A civilization could stay dark on purpose, or speak on a frequency nobody swept, or fall silent long before its light ever reached us. Absence of a signal is not proof of absence. That is the fair concession, and it stands. A machine leaves marks it can't hide, not in radio, but in the star's own light. That turns the search away from the antennas and back to the light curve itself. The real fingerprints, if they exist, are in the color of those dips and in the heat the panels would shed. So the antennas fall silent, and the light curve gets the last word. So the search turns from listening to looking, at a rule no builder can skip. Any shell large enough to drink a sun must radiate the leftover heat as infrared glow, an energy Bill physics does not forgive. Astronomers looked exactly there, hunting the surplus a swarm of collectors could not hide. It was not there. The one mark a Type 2 machine is bound to leave went missing. A second thread runs through the color of the dips. Something solid blocks every wavelength alike. Fine dust does not. Small grains block blue harder than red. And the shadow, when measured, came back tinted. The deepest dips ran deeper in blue, the fingerprint of dust, not a smooth, opaque surface. The plain reading? A cold cloud of debris, maybe a shattered comet swarm strung along the orbit. Ordinary matter before an ordinary sun. But that answer leaves a seam open. No single dust cloud yet modeled accounts for the whole ragged century of dimming. Comets remain a fit, not a verdict, which is where every thread has to be laid out and read together, one last time. So we come back to where we started, the same jagged line from the cold open, now with a note beside every dip. Documented beyond doubt, the star is real. Tabby's star, an F-type sun in Cygnus, roughly 1,470 light-years away, and Kepler watched it for 4 years. Across those 4 years, it caught dips no planet could carve. In 2015, Tabetha Boyajian named the puzzle, "Where's the flux?" For a while, the boldest reading held, a built shell, a civilization drinking its own sun. The kind of answer you want to be true. Then 2 tests killed it. No infrared glow of waste heat, and the deepest dips ran bluer, not redder, dust, not a wall. The plain reading wins. A cold comet swarm before an ordinary star. But no dust model yet explains the whole ragged century of dimming. The plain answer fits the numbers. It does not close the case. If a strange light ever does turn out to be a structure and not a stone, would we recognize it? Or reach first, as we did here, for the ordinary answer? Tell us in the comments. And if that quiet unsettles you, notice how every listening we point outward comes back empty. The puzzle some call the Great Filter. This is the Impossible Archive, where history and the impossible meet.